so much for joining us today for our webinar, how to turn any cold call into a warm one, getting attention in 15 seconds or less. I am joined here today by my colleague, Devon McDonald. Hi, everybody. As well as sales trainer extraordinaire, Jeff Hoffman.
Hi, guys.
So we're super excited to have Jeff here today with us. And before we jump into the meat of the presentation, what I'd love to do is just take care of a couple housewarming items. The first one is that we will be launching some polls throughout the webinar. And as they pop up, feel free to answer them and shoot your response back over to us. At the end of the webinar, there will be time for question and answer. So feel free to type your questions in, and we'd be happy to answer them on our end. And finally, once the webinar is over, we're going to launch a survey. It's our goal here at OpenView Labs to continue to send over content that's pertinent to you and really giving you the best information possible. So if you could just fill out that survey, shoot it back over to us. Any feedback that you might have might be greatly appreciated. So like I said, we're super excited to have Jeff here today.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Jeff has over 25 years of entrepreneurial sales experience. He's worked with companies like Google and Salesforce.com, and has also been published in Inc. magazine, Selling Power, and Fortune Small Business. So Jeff's a pleasure. He's really dynamic, and I think we're all in for a real treat today. So before we jump right into the meat of Jeff's presentation, Devon, I'm just going to ask Devon to talk a little bit about the importance of picking up the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hear a lot of people out there saying, is cold calling dead? Or making the statement, cold calling is dead. Perhaps cold calling is dead, but there is something that's not quite dead, and that is warm calling. So there's nothing more powerful with a strategic enterprise sale than having that conversation. So what we're going to talk about today are some ways to make that conversation less cold and more warm. And at the end of the day, there are still people out there who are picking up the phone.
Absolutely.
And I think those people who are thinking, oh no, my prospects will never pick up the phone, I just got to rely on email, I think you're sorely mistaken and you're missing a really big opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about cold calling, and it's no wonder so many people are interested in this topic. It's probably the #1 thing that I either talk about or asked about in all the different kind of programs I run. And I want to really boil it down to some 3 ideas when you first understand why we have such a struggle in cold calling in a traditional way. The first is this idea of AIDA, which is an old acronym in sales that exists for maybe about 100 years. If you saw the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, you can remember those letters were on the chalkboard right behind Alec Baldwin. It stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. The idea is that these are the 4 emotional states a buyer is going to experience before they actually commit. And our job in sales is to kind of be a shepherd to, you know, maneuver our prospects effortlessly through those 4 different places. Makes a lot of sense, but where a lot of sales reps get into trouble is they take the A from attention and the I from interest, and then they sandwich them together and they try to make that the first call. And that's hard to do. Like, I was not expecting your call. I didn't know you would be calling me. I pick up the phone anyway for another reason, which we'll get into in this seminar. And when I pick up the phone thinking you were someone else, what am I greeted with? Your name, your company, and what you're going to do for me and how you're going to help me. And my head is just going to explode. I am just not in a situation where I can hear this. Another reason why cold calling is so hard is the inbox is so ultra competitive. You know, the number of attempts that people are making to reach those significant buyers that we all covet, it's an extraordinarily high number. So you're competing, and I'd argue you're not even really competing with competitors at this stage. I always tell vendors when they're trying to reach me, look, if you want to get me on the phone, you're not just competing with your competitor. You're competing with my wife. You're competing with my boss. You're competing with my customers. You're competing with my clients. I mean, this is a very fierce place that you're going to be fighting in. And the metrics, you know, we're going to talk about this a little bit. The metrics show us a lot of very interesting things on why cold calling in a traditional way doesn't work. Anyone on this call who's frustrated at their lack of results of cold calling, don't be disheartened. You've been taught the wrong thing. So we'll just got to figure out what the right thing is. So a lot of studies out there, but this one I really love. It comes from Sales and Marketing Management a number of years ago. And they wanted to figure out the relationship between a cold call touch and then that deal ultimately closing. And that's a huge sales cycle we're always curious about. Touch be defined as an email or a phone call or a voicemail. A touch, by the way, is not defined as someone who calls and then doesn't leave a voicemail. I never understood that. I don't know why reps would call and not leave a voicemail. I guess the fear is I don't want to look like I'm stalking them, so I'll just wait till I get them live. But the truth is, hey, if I'm out all day and I come back to my office and I see your number, which is unknown to me, 12 times in my directory with no voicemail, chance of me picking up your call live is 0. So I don't understand that, but certainly if you're going to do a touch, leave a voicemail, et cetera, you're captured here. And what they discovered was just under half of all reps polled were averaging about 1 touch per lead. They got a lead, they had a prospect, cold call, they made 1 call, 1 email attempt, and then they were gone. Another 13% were averaging about 2 touches per lead, and then a smaller group in 3 or 4. But the interesting part of the study was at the bottom. Turns out of all the sales that happened as a result of a cold call, 80% of them required a minimum of 5 touches to get engaged. So yeah, wow, I was right. So not only is this hard to do, you think 0 for 1 is bad, well, you got to get up to the plate at least 5 times apparently. Right. So we have a lot of challenges here to make this work.
So Jeff, I guess the question is, and why we're all here today, is how can we overcome these challenges? Okay.
So we'll start with a couple of basics that are simple, but just because they're simple doesn't make them easy. I want to talk about the importance of calling in the C-suite, and I know we've all been taught that, right? Call executives. But I mean that, and the truth is, I don't care what you're selling. You could be selling a $50 add-on for a software product. I still would argue you call the C-suite. You're never going to meet the CFO. You're never going to meet the CEO to sell your product. But there's some advantages in cold calling there, which we'll talk about. Understanding the role of the gatekeeper, and there are a variety of gatekeepers in these accounts that we have to manage. Understanding what they do, what their role is, and how we work with them. And then finally, this is something that I've been teaching for years, something we call why you now, a real structure to how we're going to build our communications. 15 seconds is right. I think that every phone call you ever make is probably 15 seconds in length. That is good and bad news. It's bad news because it feels so short. But it's good news in that no one really gives you 5 seconds. It's not like someone says, hi, this is Bob, click, That's not going to happen. You're going to get some room, but our challenge is we've got 15 seconds of runway. So what plane do we want to land? So we'll talk about this approach.
All right, Jeff, well, right before we jump into our next slide on calling into the C-suite, I just launched a poll here, and I asked people what their favorite day of the week was to make their cold calls.
All right.
And we had an overwhelming 37% of people say that Tuesday is their favorite day to make cold calls. Monday was 10%, Wednesday 18%, Thursday 16%, and Friday 19%.
Friday 19%.
Is there a science behind this? What are we doing?
Yeah,
here?
well, I tell you there is. Now, industry aside, because I'm sure people are on this call that's called to a very specific group of people that are only available on a certain day a week. But statistics bear out the following facts. Number one, the most popular way to get a live connect, which is really all we're trying to do on a cold call, get that live person. It goes up with every hour after noon, and it also goes up with every day after Tuesday. And it goes up, it goes up significantly. So if you were to bisect those 2 lines, the most optimal time to call, probably after 3 o'clock on a Friday. Wow. But the numbers are through the roof. In fact, your ability to connect with a live contact could be 2 to 3x as effective if you're dialing that phone 3, 4, 5 o'clock local time on a Friday. In my offices, that was sacred time for my reps.
Wow.
Though you can probably connect. It makes sense, doesn't it? Most companies don't schedule standing weekly meetings Friday at 2, Friday at 3. Plus, what kind of mood are people in it Friday afternoon? They're in good moods, and that's when I want to call people.
Right.
They're probably more accessible. They're kind of winding their week down mentally, emotionally. I wouldn't want to call someone on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning.
Well, it seems like our audience was pretty good about that. They actually that was the smallest percentage when it comes to days of the week that people actually like to make those calls. So 10% on Monday.
Yeah, that's good. And we feel Monday's really a lousy day. But think about shifting. And the best answer for all questions regarding the science of selling is your own data. So look at it. Make your Tuesday or Wednesday calls. Try a week with Friday afternoon calls, and then compare and contrast. Hey, what did I get a different connect rate? What was the mood and spirit like at the other end of the phone? Was I able to close for anything? Start seeing the numbers and play that out.
Awesome. That's good stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about calling into the C-suite.
Yeah, so I have a lot of reasons for this, but even if you never, ever, ever meet the C-suite, I do like people when they call into them. The most obvious answer is when you call into the C-suite, you're probably not going to meet with a CEO or CFO, but whoever you want to meet with, well, they're only 1 or 2 referrals away from that executive. The good news is you're asking for a referral down an org chart. And I think that's a far easier thing to do as a salesperson, to cascade down, to let gravity help us, than to try to call low and push up a rope to get in a meeting with someone of more power. They are generally the best sources of research, meaning I can find out a ton about your typical CXO on LinkedIn, Google searches, different news searches, to speak with some level of comfort, as opposed to the director of network infrastructure, where I can find probably nothing on.
Right.
Gives you incredible internal credibility quickly. One conversation with a CXO is like a get-out-of-jail-free card. You know, you can wave that around as you navigate through your account. They give you great referrals, and I'll tell you, it can competitive-proof your account. If you are engaged with the executive suite, even on one call, it doesn't mean competitors can't sell you out. What it does mean is if a competitor is going to show up and you've got air cover even from one call from a CFO, they will let you know there's a competitor at bay. That's a guarantee. So you're not going to have to worry about a sneaky competitor just showing up there. They are not intimidated by you. They're not freaked out at a sales call. A lot of them were salespeople. So you having a phone conversation with this woman who's a COO of a company, she's not going to be all flipped out because you called her at her desk. So that's always pleasant. And, you know, fast forward a month, a quarter, a year, a decade, what do you want your contacts to look like? I would argue every call you make is a personal investment in your own career. So if you want to fast forward 10 years, what do you want in there? You want 1,000 names of network administrators? Or do you want 1,000 CFO names? And you can obviously see the difference in the value of that as an asset. And the strangeness is they're less popular. You know, I don't call directors of IT, ever. I mean, how many of us are trying to reach these people? That line is too long. Let me go to Chief Legal Counsel. Let me go to VP of Customer Service. I still want the referral to the Director of IT, but let me get that air cover so I get that call back. And the last bit, why I love them so much, you call a CXO in any major company, even all the way down to that mid-market, you are going to get a live person, maybe an executive administrator, maybe you're going to get someone live picking up the phone. And a live person beats the voicemail of your contact any day.
Absolutely. That's great.
So here we got a little snapshot here, just different places you can go to get the required information, as we'll talk about in a minute with Why Now, to get someone in the C-suite to respond. But they're not conspicuous. They're very conspicuous people. It's easy to find where these guys live.
Absolutely. All right. Now you just mentioned it. You might get their executive assistant on the phone. I think so often, especially people who might be a little bit green and new into the sales world, are scared of a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
It is someone that it's a scary person to get on the phone because they hold a lot of power, right?
Yeah.
So I guess our question for you, Jeff, is how do we leverage those gatekeepers?
Sure. Great question, and we all live it every day. First thing is identify the type. There are two types of gatekeepers. There are gatekeepers who are hired, and as part of their job is to be a gatekeeper. And by the way, those people we love. We absolutely love. We'll talk about them. There's another group of gatekeepers. They weren't hired to be a gatekeeper, but they volunteered for the job anyway. That's the person who says all calls go through me, and make sure you call me before you CC me on every email.
Yeah.
That guy is someone you want to avoid. We kind of know that. But the gatekeeper whose job is to assist the person you're speaking to, like an EA, are wonderfully powerful for us once we understand why. The second bullet says we've never met. One of my favorite introductions or calls I make when I get a gatekeeper. Hi, you've reached Paul Joseph's office. It's hi, is Paul available? I know he's not going to help you with something. Well, actually, that would be great. I actually don't know Paul personally, but ... I don't know Paul personally, and then I start. I didn't say my name. I didn't say what I wanted to call about. I started with, I don't know Paul personally. That seems like a kind of a weird, not a very important intro, but it is. How many of us attempt to, quote unquote, get around a gatekeeper, right? We're going to do it by what? We're going to act all super familiar. Hey, is Paul there? No, he's not. Oh, well, I'll just, it's a personal matter. Can I have his voicemail, please? And then the EA says, sure. And then you hear, how does Paul leave a message? You think, yes, I've just gotten around the gatekeeper. I got to the personal voicemail. Well, what do you think the gatekeeper is going to do at 5 o'clock?
Go into his voicemail.
Of course, you're going to play on the voicemail. I don't even know my code for my voicemail. My assistant Sherry does all that. I don't even know. There's no going around an assistant. The EA is the executive by proxy. So you acting all familiar, I'd argue, is a lie. You're acting like something you're not, and that's why people don't like salespeople. Why don't you disarm people with the truth early? I don't know you. We've never spoken, but, and then you go into what you want to talk about. That's the kind of respect that people respond to, and I think it's an important way to introduce yourself. And engage them directly. Once you cannot close someone to close somebody else. I can't close an assistant to get on his calendar if I've never spoken to him. I can't close an assistant for what do I think he would want me to do. All I can do is close the person I'm speaking with. So if I get an assistant on the phone, how we've never met, but I was on your website and I saw that your CEO was quoted in yesterday's Wall Street Journal about how critical it is that your systems can support this large merger and acquisition. I read about. My name is Jeff Hoffman. I'm calling from XYZ Company. That's exactly the kind of customers that we support in the moments of a large M&A when they want to make sure their systems work. So based on this, I thought I'd start with your boss. But since I have you on the phone, who do you recommend that I contact in IT, introduce our services? Now, what I just did, I'll show you in a moment, this why you now technique. But if you notice, I said, I thought I'd start with your boss, but since you offered, who do you think I should talk to? I will engage that EA directly. That gives them the power they already have, and by the way, they have a ton of it. So they're very easily will take that power, and it engages them at a place that's worthy. If you get an EA's name, and she says, yes, my name's Elaine, and you want to talk to Bob in IT, well, what do you think happens when I call Bob in IT? You think I have to say, oh, I just got a message from, I was talking to Elaine, Joe's assistant? Or do I say, I just got off the phone with Elaine and she told me to call you? I mean, is it fair to say everybody knows who Elaine is in their company? This is a executive's EA. It's got a huge, huge amount of brass when you use it. And I think a lot of the stuff we've been taught is to ignore the EA or to bulldoze over them. It's like saying, I want to bulldoze over the executive, him or herself.
I mean, I think it's so true. We often, when we're training teams from the portfolio, we say, walk away from every conversation with something. Make an ask and get something that you can use in your next conversation. And the Gatekeeper is a great place to get that information. They really know the business inside and out. So
they know the org chart better.
Of course. And I really do like your approach of just being upfront. We've never met. It's sort of, and it goes back to playing up a little bit of that vulnerability card.
Isn't that right?
I think a lot of people, we sort of overlook the fact that people do generally want to help others.
Yeah.
If you come in and you seem like you're lying, I don't think anyone wants to help that type of person, right? So,
Devon, I could not agree with you more. I've often said when people ask, I want to be more self-confident in sales, how to be more self-confident. It's not about you putting a line in the sand or being tough or being strong or having this iron, uniform around you where nothing bothers you. I'd argue it's the opposite. I've always thought that self-confidence is about embracing one's vulnerabilities and doing scary things anyway, and that's what this is. And how do you not respond as another human being when you're greeted with that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Good point.
All right, this is my favorite
subject.
So why you now email?
Yeah, I love it so. It's taken on a lot of flavors over the last 15 years, which is how long ago I started thinking about prospecting and cold calling in this world. And I call it prospecting. By the way, I know a lot of different people on the phone. My thinking is this, cold calling, prospecting. If you're ever picking up a telephone and you're contacting someone that you do not have a personal relationship with, I think you're cold calling. It doesn't matter if they're a customer of your business. If you don't know them, no obligation for them to return the call. I like a nice approach that gets me there. I want to be 15 seconds or under, so I'm going to limit this to 3 sentences, and this is what it looks like. It takes 5 minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. First sentence we call the why you. That's going to be a sentence about the person or company you're trying to reach. And it should relate back to a sales trigger. Many folks on the phone know what a sales trigger is, but if you don't, a sales trigger would be something that if it were to happen at one of your accounts, it triggers the excuse for you to call them. It's really important that you have an answer to the question, why am I calling you? And it can't be because you're on my lead list or on the New Jersey rep or you're one of 50 trade show leads from the Javits Center this morning. You need to have some thought on why this was a special call. So you're going to say something about the customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are constantly just, quote-unquote, calling to check in, and those days are gone.
Long gone.
Checking in, touching base.
Yeah, it's brutal. Following up, seeing how things are going. Look, you can. I always say, University of California, Santa Cruz has done a lot of studies on linguistics, and one of the things they've discovered, about 7% of all communication is vocabulary. About 35% is tone of voice, and 50 whatever is less percent is body language. So if you think about it another way, 93% of all communication is nonverbal. So if you want to be polite and friendly and build rapport, do it with nonverbal cues. Use your language, the vocabulary, to close. And if you want to dress it up nice and pretty, well, then you dress it up nice and pretty with your tone of voice. That, I'm calling to check in, see how things are going. You're right, CeCe, that's a dinosaur. So you've written this beautiful first sentence about your customer. Now what? Well, now we're going to say something about ourselves. Sounds kind of obvious, but how much of us do the opposite? How much of us, hello, this is Jeff. Hi, Jeff. My name is Tom, and I work for a company called XYZ. How are you today? Some nonsense that completely violates any sense of having a nice, constructed, engaged call. We're so used to talking about ourselves first. Talk about the customer first. We'll talk about ourselves second in the why you now. Say something about yourself. That also relates back to that sales trigger. Here's the hard part. Whatever you say about yourself has to be less syllables than whatever you said about your customer. When you write this like an email, it should look like a capital letter F. Longest sentence is that first one. That's about the customer. Middle one's about you. That's the middle. And then we'll talk about the close. That's the rhythm and cadence we want. Very disarming. We want to almost make half of this message about the customer. So we've said something interesting about the customer, and then I said something about how it connects back to me and my offering. Only one thing left to do. Gotta close it. Let's ask the question. Open-ended. Who, what, where, when, how, or why. Let's go get something we want. Maybe it's a meeting. Maybe it's a referral. Maybe it's more information. Maybe it's a place or a resource you can learn more about the company. Maybe you want to invite them to a networking event or have them come to a webinar. Maybe you're looking for referrals in their ecosystem. You want to get a partner involved. Hey, man, whatever you want to do in sales, here's your time to ask. It should be open-ended, and I'd argue it should be something you want that's relatively easy to get. Sales is a long journey. We're at letter A of the AIDA acronym. I don't think I'm asking for an order. I don't think I'm asking for access to procurement. I don't think I'm asking for purchase orders. But I think it's okay to say, hi, Devon. We've never met, but I was on your website this morning, and I saw your contribution in one of your blogs. We were talking about the criticalness of making sure sales and marketing align in any of your messaging. Well, my name is Jeff Hoffman, and although we've never met, that's exactly what my customers ask for every time I meet with them. Based on this, Devon, I thought I'd start with you. Who should I talk to in OpenView? Introduce my training services to your portfolio companies.
CeCe Bazar.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Here I am.
And that's what I want, right?
I'm busy.
That's right, but isn't that all we want, though, from the Devons of the world?
Absolutely.
CeCe Bazar on my iPhone is gold, because now that's a whole new world for me. Hi, CeCe. I just got off the phone with Devon. She told me to call you this morning. Boy, all of a sudden you can feel the heat. You can feel that we can start to break through this cold call process.
Absolutely. So here's the question I think that people sometimes have for us, and they ask us all the time, subject line. When you're writing a why you now email,
yeah.
How are we kicking this off? What's the subject line?
Sure. I think we got an example of an email, and I can speak to it if we show it, or just
yeah.
There we go. Good. So this is one I sent a number of years ago to a real person. The names have been protected too, and especially protect me. But I sent an email out to the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at EDS, large company in Dallas. Many of the folks on the phone probably know of them. Subject, your cover story in sales marketing management. Hello, Michael. I just got off the phone with Barbara after she shared your interview with me in this month's issue of Sales Marketing Management. I found your recent sales shift to discipline, structure, and focus. Those were in quotes. Intriguing. Nice sentence about him. He was on the cover story of a magazine. Now, how many people on this phone are subscribers to Sales Marketing Management?
I'm sure a lot.
Really? I'm sure none.
Oh.
I would guess maybe 10%. It's not the most, this isn't Newsweek, or there is no Newsweek. This is no Time magazine. But the point is, when he got that cover story, what do you think he did when that magazine was delivered to his office? He just kind of look at it and go, oh, here's me on the magazine again, and just tossed it in the garbage?
I know.
Framed it.
I bet his assistant framed it. I bet it was a present. I bet he had a nice, beautiful frame, matted, and it's hanging conspicuously above his desk. And he looks at it every day. And why wouldn't he? Because he's a human being just like the rest of us are. It's flattery when you get the cover of a magazine. And I'm speaking to that. Hey, you were on the cover of a magazine. I talked to your assistant. I found out you care about these three things. Next sentence. Many technology companies rely on our approach to sales training. Ooh, I got to pitch a little. Yes, you can pitch a little in second sentence. Just keep it less than the first sentence. Rely on our approach to sales training. Do the same principles. Hey, what did I really say there? You have discipline, structure, and focus. So do I. Yeah. It wasn't any like crazy connection that he had. It's a fairly loose connection, but just plausible. Now we'll close them. Who do you recommend that I contact? Introduce our program. Reply. Jeff, thanks. Talk to Margaret. Does that mean he's going to buy? Of course not. Does that mean he even remembers me in 5 minutes? Of course not. But that's what I want to have happen on a cold call. That is magic. I can do something with this email back to Margaret. I couldn't before. To answer your question on subject lines, the subject line here was your cover story and sales marketing management. You got 3 sentences to play with. Something about the customer, something about you, and a close. Of those 3, CeCe, which one do you think the customer cares the most about?
The one about them?
I think that's probably right. So that's what we're going to lead with. Give them what they want. I paraphrase the first sentence, and that's my subject. Your cover story is sales marketing management. Your interview in last week's Wall Street Journal. Hey, one of my favorite places to find out stuff about executives, type in an executive's name and then type .ppt. And you will see all the PowerPoints this person has presented on over the last 10 years.
Wow.
Great things to talk about when you email and voicemail.
That's great.
Great idea.
A great tip. So Jeff, here's a quick question for you. This gentleman, Michael, say he didn't CC Margaret on the email.
Yeah.
How do you go about getting her on the horn there?
Yes, he didn't CC, but he still said Margaret?
Yeah, just said her name.
Okay, so I'm a big believer when I get an email from a customer, I'm done emailing. I don't email until I talk to their voice and they talk to my voice. That has to happen. This is real people doing business. So I'm going to call Michael directly. I'm probably going to get his assistant, and I follow the same approach. Yes, hi, is Michael there? Who's calling? Well, actually, Michael doesn't know me, but he was kind enough to send me an email a few hours ago with a reference to Margaret, and I had a question about that. Now, what's the likelihood of the EA putting me through? It's pretty high.
Pretty high.
It's all true.
Right.
Picks up the phone. Hi, this is Michael. Hi, Michael. This is Michael. We've never met. You were kind enough to respond to an email this morning regarding sales training. Oh, yes, I remember. Yes, you were kind enough to give me Margaret as a reference, but I had a question for you. Why Margaret? Oh, Margaret runs blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Click. I need that. I need that 30 seconds because now I go from I got your name from Michael to I just got off the phone with Michael. And the difference between I got your name from and I just got off the phone with is the difference between not going to President's Club and going to President's Club.
Right.
I think a great way to think about this is we all work for, companies. Think about the CEO of your company or the leader of your company, and they likely do have executive assistants, and kind of think to the interaction, the relationship between that executive at your company and their assistant. And if you ever get an email forwarded to you from the CEO of your company, you're going to respond to that.
In like 2 seconds.
You're going to pay attention to it.
Yep.
Someone gets off the phone, or someone gives me a call and says, Devon, I just got off the phone with Scott Maxwell. He told me to call you. I'm going to have a conversation.
I might outbox you. I might not work with you, but you just became a now pile problem.
Absolutely.
You just became something I got to deal with. And that's what prospecting is. Prospecting is cold calling is not cold selling. You're not selling anything yet. You're trying to get attention, eyes and ears to move people away from them. Doing this now pile to including you as a new I'm doing it now pile. It's a brief moment in time, but a one that requires a tremendous amount of focus and almost surgical approach, I would argue, to make it worthwhile.
Absolutely. All right, this is awesome stuff. So we're running a little bit low on time here. So I'm going to skip over. We had a couple people email in beforehand with some strategic problems that we were going to be able to talk through. But what I really want to do is I want to open it up to the audience. Any questions that you guys have, feel free to ask away. And we already have a couple in here. This first question is for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
If you make 5 cold calls, do you recommend 5 voicemails? And what is the frequency of calls you recommend every other day, every 5 days?
What a great question. Who's that from?
This is from Nick.
Thanks, Nick. I love it. I love that you're already thinking about going to 5 touches. It tells me you're a winner. That's good stuff, Nick. This is what I recommend. And again, I'm contrarian on this. What do most of us do? We do a call and email within moments of each other as like a double hit. Hi, this is my email. Hey, this is a voicemail. I sent you an email. Then we wait 2 or 3 days. Do hit 3. Then we push it out a week. Hit 4, and usually we're done, or maybe 2 weeks later. So I'm totally opposite. First of all, I think you're right to think you should mix it up. I go phone and email. I tend to go heavy on phone, so I like to do 3 or 4 phone calls for every email, but everyone's different. Yes, leave those voicemails, but the frequency should be the opposite. I want your longest touch gap to be between touches 1 and 2. So if you're going to call on a Friday, I don't want you calling again or emailing again for touch 2 until a week Friday. That sounds crazy. No, it's not, because you got to give people the chance to call you back, and you can't be annoying early. You haven't earned the right to be annoying yet. But when I do have to call 2, is I literally cut each touch point like with half-life. So it looks like this. Call 1 on a Friday, email number 2, the next Friday. But touch 3, that's happening Wednesday. And touch 4, that's happening Thursday, which means touch 5 is happening also Thursday. So you're going to build up acceleration and momentum in your approach. This works. This gets people to call you back. When someone calls me once and then twice and then they call me again in a week, this doesn't feel urgent, so I delete you. But when you call me once and then your frequency of calling starts to increase, this starts to feel like the urgency train. Don't mention that you've been trying to reach the person because that is annoying. Change that first sentence. So if I have a sales and marketing management quote one day, I've got a PowerPoint the next. I want to keep it fresh. But yeah, think about making those time shrink, not expand. Great question, Nick.
All right, we have another question here from Alana. What if they ask you to send an email? You get someone live on the phone, you ask them to send an email rather than answering what you're asking them on a cold call.
So you ask them for the referral,
Yep.
and they say, well, send me the information and we'll forward it on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's a kind of a
Weird.
she must be calling from a strange place. No, I think it's Alana. I think clearly that's a classic blow off we get. And what I always do is the same. I'm always very clear on my closes. And I think that the way you craft them is very simple. So the customer says, well, who do you recommend that I talk to? And they say, just send me some information and I'll forward it accordingly. I say, I'll be happy to. When I send you this information and you have a chance to review it, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow morning, Leslie, to see if you figured out yet where this should go. When I call you tomorrow, will you take my call? Stop. That's a very strong direct close. Will you take my call? We all know she don't want to take your call.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that she's being a little passive-aggressive with the I'll forward it along. She didn't say no. And you want to let people know it's okay to say no to me, but if you're going to be passive-aggressive with me, I'm kind of going to play this like I'm Forrest Gump, and I just don't understand. So I'm not going to pick up on the hint. So when you say, I'll call you tomorrow, will you take my call? Well, you know what she's going to say, which is, no. She's, tomorrow's terrible. And then you'll go back to your referral question. No, I'm not going to be available tomorrow. Okay, well, who will be available, which is probably the person you're going to forward this to, right? Now, I'm not promising a lot of that you're going to get, anything better than 10-15% of these to actually cough out the name. But okay, it's a way to rescue X number of these, ones that bomb out on you. I will say this, though. If you get that response, all you've asked for was a referral, move on. Doesn't mean move on to a different company. Move on with a new contact. Look, if you're calling the C-suite, that's 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 assistants. 0 for 1 at the CEO, try the CFO. Over there, go see. Because again, we're just looking for that one person to cough up a name. So I think you can still work the odds.
That's great. All right, here's another question we have from Kelly. You've spoken with the person, so you've gotten someone on the phone before.
Okay.
They say they're interested. They're looking over, putting in front of their team there. How do you suggest following up or checking on the status without being annoying?
So, it's hard because you don't want to do that like, hey, I'm just calling to see that meeting you got. Did you get everybody together? Or do you know what day you want? It's called chasing a no in sales. Start chasing no's, and you feel your social value plummet. So you're right, Kelly, to feel that and want to avoid it. So you want to make sure that your closes are very specific. So if we have this, like you had this good, genuine call and the prospect says, I think we actually are interested in this. There's 2 or 3 people I like to get together and try to make the call happen. Instead of saying, okay, great, well, call me back and let me know what day you want to do it, you say, the first question, you say, well, who do you have in mind? Oh, well, I was going to bring in my person from marketing, person from engineering. Now, most salespeople at this moment are going to say, oh, what are their names? Don't ask for their names. You can get those later. Say, oh, well, why did you choose them? Do you work with them frequently? Have you been on buying committees with them before? Do they sit on your floor? Start really painting a picture of who these people are and determining how close is your contact to them. You will discover quickly if she is or not. If she's close to the customer, say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't you grab them for 5 minutes so we can do a quick intro right now before we set the call up? See, I want to get the momentum right now. I want her to grab people, even if it's one of them, and say, oh, this is the guy who's going to talk to us next week about XYZ. Oh, hi, my name's Jeff, and we can do that. If I get the sense that she doesn't have a great relationship with them, then I'm going to close her by saying, okay, what we'll do, why don't you call Mark, I'll call Leslie, let's find a day right now, you and me, that we think we can get everybody on the calendar for. You don't, in authority closing, which is what's required early when you don't have definitive next steps, the idea is that you, Kelly, have to drive. Us in sales, we are the only ones that get to touch the steering wheel. Customer can touch the brakes, customer can touch the gas, but the steering wheel is us. And why? Well, your customers never bought this before, but you've sold this thousands of times. Who better to drive than you? Mm-hmm. See, I know the way. I know the way to happy, fun customer land. So I want to take you there. But I don't want you to tell me how to get to happy customer land, because you're going to get us in the wrong place. So usually when we struggle to chase the meeting that isn't happening, ask yourself, was I definitive in my closes? Did I actually ask for things and get a yes or a no? Or was I putting stuff on the customer's lap and waiting? If you're ever waiting, you made a bad decision in sales.
That's great. That's great.
Long term.
Yes.
So I know we're running a little bit over, but we were a little bit late to start, so I'm going to just grab 2 more questions.
I love it.
I know, this is
I'm
great.
all fired up. You got the Red Sox later? Bring it, CeCe.
These questions are coming. Jeff, someone asked how much coffee you drink before you start your
I had no coffee today. No, I did. I got
high on life.
I'm high on life. I'm like when I am, you know, like those toys where you wind them up and they spin around and then they fall over. I am like this, but I don't go slow. I go late and I fall over and I'm done.
Hopefully not until after the Red Sox.
Hopefully after the Red Sox game. That's right.
So we got an email or a question over here from Matt. So Matt wants to know, how do you stay with the power when you're calling into the C-suite? You need the CIO to make the final decision on this. They're the person that you're contacting.
Good.
How do you stay there?
Okay, well, you don't have to. See, once you've made a connection with someone, you don't feel this urge of, oh, I better CC them on every email, or let me have check-in points along the way. That's the quickest way to piss off an executive. You've landed in the executive's lap, and they have given you the gift of a referral. Accept the gift and move on. You never have to share intent as a salesperson. You can pick up the phone and call that CEO whenever you want. Don't feel like you need to have some kind of buddy system where you're always linked at the arm. If I've had a conversation with somebody, I have no problem in calling them 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 years later for any reason I want and referring back to, we talked about a month ago, Bob, and you were kind enough to send me to a couple of folks in your engineering team to look at our product. I can tell you it's a hot mess down there. So I do a hot mess down there and I'm stuck. Watch the guy help you. Because you weren't bothering him with every little inch along the way. Once you got a positive response from an executive, Matt, it doesn't go away because you haven't talked to him today. Yeah. Have faith and confidence and trust in your own ability to build relationships. You did a good enough job to get the referral, then you have a good enough job to go back to him later.
Awesome. All right.
Like that one?
Like yeah,
that?
That's
Devon
great.
like that one.
Love that.
Devon like that one.
Keep the faith.
Got to keep the faith. Is there a proper length or high points to hit in a voicemail?
Proper length of an email for sure.
Or voicemail.
For voicemail. We want this whole thing south of 20 seconds.
Okay.
South of 20 seconds. That's about as long as you're going to get. But you said something else.
They want to know what the proper length or high points are to hit on a voicemail.
So I always treat my voice like a roller coaster ride.
All right.
Yes. I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Got to be along for the journey.
Yeah, first of all, strap in because it's going to be scary. And number two, when you think about how a roller coaster is built, things that have excitement to them, and for us in sales, it's the close. You can build to that level of energy a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. A bad way of building energy in something that's entertainment or that's anything professional or something like closing is to build a staircase up to it. The idea is I'm going to build momentum and I'm going to build excitement, I'm going to build energy until I get to a place where I can ask for the order. Unfortunately, people won't go along for that ride because they'll jump off at step 3. It's like, this is boring. So I want to do it like a roller coaster does. A roller coaster takes you up to the top of the hill, has a nice pregnant pause, and then drops you to a thrilling ride, and the start of it is insane. Then you go through all the bends and the turns and the buns and everything else, and then you end with something also furious and fantastic. And when you get up a roller coaster and you love it, what do you remember? That first drop and that last bit of the ride, the bookends. That's what everybody remembers is the bookends. And so the high points of, as she asked, of this email or voicemail is going to be the sentence about the customer and your close. Some about me is almost irrelevant, and that's the way I want it. So I'm going to start off hot and strong like a cup of coffee. Hey, we've never met, and I saw this on your website. And my name's Jeff, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to calm down a little bit. I'm going to start building up to my goal. And I'll tell you, based on this, I thought I'd start with you. Who do you think I should call to introduce our services? I want to think of like a letter U. And that'll kind of cascade you through 20 seconds.
We got a letter F and a letter U, Jeff.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're trying to say here. All right.
Well, oh, that's funny.
That is all the time that we have for today. I know. I know. So if you guys want to connect with Jeff, definitely jump on Twitter at MJ Hoffman or at Your Sales MBA.
I'll be tweeting at Fenway.
He'll be tweeting at Fenway tonight. And make sure to keep your eyes peeled for our next webinar coming up on structuring SaaS sales compensation for your team. So Jeff, we really can't thank you enough for joining us today. This was a ton of fun, and there are so many questions coming in still. So please make sure to tweet your questions at Jeff, and if you want to keep the conversation going, feel free to use our hashtag #WarmCalling. So Jeff, again, thank you. Devon, thanks for being here, and happy prospecting, everybody.
Happy selling.
Take care.